Alrighty, in this video we're going to go ahead and we're going to stub out our main activity and our adapter. So I want to just get some a little bit more boilerplate out of the way before we write the adapter, because the adapter is going to be fairly interesting. I want to show you guys how we're going to use the adapter first, and then we'll implement it, because the adapter is going to require that we return multiple different kinds of view holders, which is a really interesting and common problem, and I want to show you guys one way of solving that particular issue. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start off inside my views package, and I'm going to create my adapter class. So I'm going to right click Java class. Now remember, this is the recycler view adapter that is going to be used to display our pending friend requests and our messages on the inbox screen, as well as our headers. Now I'm going to go ahead and name this class main activity adapter. Mute that out there. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, before I write my constructor or my fields, I'm going to go ahead and write an interface. Now I'm only going to be writing the public members and the local fields to this. We're not going to be implementing the main activity adapter quite yet. So I'm going to write a public interface, not public int, public interface main activity listener. And he's going to have a void on message clicked method, which will take a message, and then a void on contact request clicked, which will take in a contact request, and an int position, which will be the position of that contact request in the contact request array. Now we can go ahead and write out our private fields. So I'm going to go ahead and write a private list of messages. Import that class. Private list of contact requests. So these should be pretty self-explanatory. One's the array of lists and one's the array of contact requests. Then I'm going to have a private base activity, which is going to be the activity that this adapter is attached to, and it'll also serve as a way to pass a context around. And then we'll have a private layout inflator, and then we'll have a private main activity listener. Now let's go ahead and create our constructor. My constructor is going to be taking in an activity and a listener, and those are the only two things. And so I was able to hit Alt Insert Enter to generate my constructor, and then I'm going to click on activity and listener and hit OK, so that both of these get pulled in. Before I forget, I do want to go ahead and make sure that we inherit from recycler view adapter. Now, the way that I'm going to do this is I'm not going to pass any generic type parameters into the adapter class like we did before, and that's because we're serving multiple non-related view holders, so I don't want to pass in the type parameter that'll constrain our view holders from having a common ancestor in the class hierarchy. But, of course, by typing extends recycler view adapter, we got some squiggles. That's just because we haven't implemented those members yet. Let's go ahead and do that real fast. Before we finish the constructor, I'm just going to hit Alt Enter. And all that's going to do is it's going to create our 3 required members of being an adapter. But let's just ignore them for now. We're not going to be implementing any of them quite yet. Now, jumping back to the constructor, just because some of these methods are so trivial, we can go ahead and finish them off. Like, for example, we'll say inflator equals activity.getLayoutInflator, and we'll say messages equals new array list, and we will say contact request equals new array list. Now let's go ahead and generate our getters for our messages array and our contact request array. So I'll hit Alt Insert, I'll select getter, and then I'm going to select messages and contact requests, and then hit enter. And now we have our 2 getters for that. Now, as far as our adapter goes, that's really all we need to do as far as its public API, so to speak. It's now capable we're now capable of going back into our main activity and kind of integrating it with our main activity, and then we'll come back here. Once it's integrated into our main activity, then we'll implement it. And that way we'll be able to test it as we go forward. So let's jump into our main activity and get that guy started. So what we have up here, we're setting our title, and we're setting our nav drawer, and we're setting our content view. So that's all good. The first thing I will do is let's go ahead and set up a click listener for our new message button, because that's such a trivial thing to implement. We can go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to say find view by ID r.id.activity_main new message button. And then what I'm going to do, I did forget, we do need to provide some fields up here at the top. I do like getting the fields out of the way first. So I will go ahead and write a private main activity adapter, and I'm also going to write a private list of messages, and a private list of contact requests. Contact requests, sure. When you get to a more general class like the main activity that's less specific, I feel that it should be a little bit more specific with its field names. Request in this context could mean so many different things that I think contact request serves as a better name here. All right, let's go ahead and hit Alt-Enter to import the list interface. And now that we have our fields together, let's finish our create method, or at least so far, as far as we're going to go. This find view by ID, let's complete it by setting set on click listener and passing in this. So make sure that you actually do something with the return of find view ID, otherwise it doesn't really accomplish anything. Okay, so let's go ahead and do instantiate our thing. So let's go ahead and instantiate my adapter. I'm going to say adapter equals new main activity adapter. And I'm going to be providing this and this for both of its parameters. So we're fulfilling the context/activity with this, and we're also fulfilling our activity listener with this. Then let's go ahead and get our messages. So messages equals adapter get messages. We're just grabbing a really convenient reference to their the lists inside the adapter, so we can manipulate them a little bit more directly within our main activity. All right, let's go ahead and now, not a whole lot left to do. I'm going to say recycler view equals recycler view find view by d r.d recycler view. You know what I'm saying. So we have our recycler view aliased out, and then let's go ahead and set our adapter on our recycler view. Let's also, I'm going to say recycler view dot set layout manager, and I'm going to pass in a new linear layout manager. In the future, once we have a chance to talk about how this adapter is going to be implemented, I am going to go ahead and write it so that it'll use a grid layout manager if you have a tablet and a wider screen, and so it'll show things in a grid. But because we haven't talked about how we're going to implement the recycler view adapter yet, we're going to just stick with the layout manager for now. Now, the last thing I want to do is I want to invoke on every millisecond. So I'm going to say scheduler.invoke on every milliseconds. The runnable I'm going to pass in is going to say on refresh. So basically all we're doing is we're invoking on refresh every X milliseconds. And now that's because the on refresh, if you recall, is that method that comes from the swipe to refresh guy. And so I want basically the on refresh to happen whether or not the or I want it to happen refresh automatically every, let's say, 3 minutes. But I also want the same logic to happen if the user manually triggers a refresh. So we'll just invoke the onRefresh method, and then we'll overload the onRefresh method here in a second. For the timing, let's go ahead and do 1000 times 60 times 3. When doing things in milliseconds, I really like doing it, breaking out into the individual parts. And the compiler will turn this into a constant anyway, so there's no performance degradation. It's just a lot more readable. So we have 1000 because there's 1000 milliseconds in a second, times 60 because there's 60 seconds in a minute, times 3, and that's because I want this to happen every 3 minutes, and that just makes it a lot clearer to look at. Okay, so let's go ahead and implement the on click first, and just get that button out of the way. The button is really the simplest thing in this main activity. There's not a whole lot to say about it. I'm going to put my keyboard cursor on the squigglies right here, where I have my set on click listener. Hit Alt Enter, select make main activity implement this interface, and then hit Enter. Change the name of that parameter because that parameter bugs me. We'll alias out the ID of the view, so we'll say int ID equals view get ID, and I'll say if ID equals r.id activity main new message button. Now what will we do when they click the new message button? Well, it's pretty straightforward. I'm simply going to do start activity, new intent, passing in this and new message activity dot class. So we're just going to be launching the new message activity. Now the next method I want to implement is the refresh method. So for that, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say alt insert, and I'm going to type in override members, and I'm going to do on refresh. And just hit enter. It's just a super quick way to get that method stub out there. So we're overriding the onRefresh method. Again, I already pointed this out in this video, but to repeat myself, this is the method that's invoked when the user will manually toggle a refresh, or it'll also be invoked every 3 seconds. Now, really, all it's going to do is I'm going to say swipe refresh dot set refreshing true, and then I'm going to post two requests. I'm going to say bus post new messages dot search messages request false true. So we're basically, for our search messages, we don't want to get any sent messages we've sent, but we do want to get received messages that we've received. And then I'm also going to say bus post new contacts dot get contacts request request. And then I'm going to pass in false for the from us. So we're going to get contact requests that were sent from another user to us. So in that in mind, let's go ahead and implement the handlers for both of these requests here, because that's going to be pretty straightforward too. Pretty much stuff, again, that we've already really talked about, and I'm just repeating code here. So we'll do our on search messages first. So on messages loaded. I'm going to pass, for the parameter, it's going to be a final messages dot search messages response. And I am going to go ahead and make sure I do messages dot instead of message dot. I'm going to go ahead and do a scheduler dot invoke on resume. Come on, you can do it. Invoke on resume, passing in messages dot search. You know, alternatively, I should be able to do response dot get class. That works too. And then new runnable. A little bit less code there. And so when we receive our messages, on the next time this activity is resumed, what I want to do is I want to say swipe refresh dot set refreshing false. So our swipe refresh is no longer refreshing. Then if not response did succeed, we're going to say response dot show error toast, passing in main activity dot this for the context. Now, of course, we have to specify main activity dot this is because we are inside of a anonymous inner class. And so we have to specify the outer class to access it's this. And then we'll do an early exit right there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say messages.clear, messages.addAll, response.messages, and I'm just going to say adapter.notify data set changed. This should be add all, not add. All right, so now let's do our contact request. It's going to be basically the exact same method. Again, not that exciting. So on contact requests loaded, and then we'll do final contacts dot get contacts request response, and then I'll do scheduler invoke on resume, passing in response get class, a new runnable. And for this, the same thing. Swipe refresh dot set refreshing false. So our swipe refresh will stop refreshing when the first of these results come in. An alternative implementation, you could go ahead and write an API endpoint that returns both your messages and your pending contact requests, and that way you would only have to make one web request. But to keep things a little bit simpler, I decided to do two requests here. So if not response did succeed, then response.show error toast main activity.this and return. Otherwise, we're going to do contact request.clear, contact request.addAll, response request. And that's it. So now what I want to go ahead and do is really the last thing I want to do here is I want to implement this interface that we haven't implemented yet, the listener for the clicks. So I'll go ahead and down here and pause this for a second for you guys to, take a look at this so you guys can pause it for a second if you want to. Otherwise, I'm going to hop all the way back up into my OnEuro create. I'm going to put my keyboard cursor on the squiggles, hit Alt-Enter, and I'm going to select Make Main Activity Implement our main activity listener. Hit Enter. And then hit enter. And so now our main activity has two members, our on message clicked and our on contact request clicked, that we can implement when the adapter detects a click. And really, that's all main activity is mostly responsible for. The last thing that we need to worry about here is, besides implementing these two members, and a couple others that have to do with these two members, is we have to write out our adapter. But since that's going to be kind of an interesting challenge here, I'm going to go ahead and put that on the next video. So we'll see you guys then.